The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you who celebrate that. We are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters. I'm Shannon Penrod. So thrilled to be with you here this morning. We're going to be live for the next 2 hours talking to you about autism and how you and I can be more effective, more efficient, working with an individual on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, teacher, or practitioner, or if you are a teenager or a young adult or an adult on the autism spectrum, we really are focusing on what can we do to learn new skills, all of us, and to diminish challenging behavior so that we can all be more productive, whether we're working with an individual on the spectrum or if you are an individual on the autism spectrum. We talk a lot about ABA, applied behavior analysis, and there's a good reason for that because we know it's been proven scientifically to be effective in helping all of us, including individuals on the autism spectrum, to overcome challenges and be more productive. So that is one of the reasons why we talk about ABA a lot, but it is by no means the only thing we talk about. We look at autism from a 360-degree perspective and take moments to look at what the emotional side of this, what the financial side of this is. What is the impact on siblings? One of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So, but always the show is meant to be interactive. We've set this up in a way that it should be a conversation, and I got to be honest with you, I never enjoy it more than when it is a conversation. So how can you get in touch with us and interact with us? Emily's going to show you some different ways on the bottom of the screen, and while she's doing that, I'm going to remind you that the only place to watch us live still is www.autism-live.com. When you go there, and by the way, on that site, our show runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's on an endless loop where you can go there at any point and you're going to catch something going on here in the studio. But we are live 2 hours a day. It is from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. That's Eastern time in the United States, and that is Monday through Friday. And then if you're on the West Coast, it is 10 a.m. to noon, and of course, whatever other time zone you're in, I will count on you to do the math, because math is not my area. As you know, if you watch the show. But in any case, and I have lived in different time zones, and I know that when you live in a time zone, you just get really good at being able to do the math. But we do webcast live during those hours, and when we do, on the website, you see that there is a box that becomes active. If you put your cursor there and you type away in it, hit enter, whatever you type shows up magically here on my screen. I have the opportunity then to share it with everyone. So there's a stopgap there. If you want to put personal information in and say, hey Shannon, I need to know about this, could you email me about it? Go ahead, put your email address in. I'll be able to take that out before I share it with everyone. But the great thing about it is that it's free. You don't have to log in, and it gives you the opportunity to ask a question in real time from whoever I end up having sit in the chair next to me or whoever I'm talking to on Skype or on the phone. And really, that's what this is about, is hooking you up with answers and information in a free format that's a little bit flexible. If you are watching us in any of the different ways that you can, where we are recorded, I want you to know, don't feel bummed and think, I missed out on the opportunity to talk to that person. We always have a way of connecting with guests that we've had on the show, so send your questions and we'll be happy to forward them on. All right. I also like to do the disclaimer at the top of the show that I'm not an expert in autism. Au contraire, my friends. I am not a legal expert. I'm not an expert in nutrition. Why am I here? I know what you're thinking. Me too some days. I'm here because I'm a mom. I'm an autism mom and a former teacher. And my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's now 9.5. And so I walk this path with you. That's the long and the short of it. And while I will not understand every little thing that you're going through and every huge thing that you're going through, because it's different for all of us, right? I want you to know that I feel for you. I have compassion for what you're going through, and I have a passion for making sure that you get answers, because people gave me answers, and my life is a direct result of that. My child is doing very well. But if there hadn't been people who gave me answers and more questions, heaven only knows where we would be right now. So that's why I'm here. I want to be your telephone switchboard operator and hook you up with the answers when I can. Try me. I love to do that. So tell me your questions, tell me what you're looking for, and maybe we can hook you up with someone or something that will help you on this journey. That's what we're here for. Okay, having said that, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and try to make sense of it from a perspective of what we're doing with our children. And all this week we've been doing the DISs. And this is a group of words that we did dyslexia, and these are terms that we have not featured before on the show. So these are first timers for us. And a lot of time, there may be many of you who never hear these phrases. But if you do, helpful to know what it is you're talking about. And sometimes when you Google these things, you end up getting our actual definitions, which are hard to understand. They're often filled with more jargon terms. So we give you the actual definition, and then we give you a working definition, which isn't as exact, but helps you to gain an appreciation of how this might fit into your puzzle. Okay, so today's term is dysphagia. All right, and let's take a look at what our actual definition is. Dysphagia is impairment of speech and verbal comprehension, especially when associated with brain injury. All right, let's look at our actual definition, which is difficulty with speech and written language after a brain injury. But I can tell you that one of them is wrong. They're both right, but one of them isn't the right one. In any case, what we really want to focus on here is when we're talking about dysphagia or aphasia, the difference between the two, and they're often used interchangeably, and sometimes people use them incorrectly. Aphasia is a complete lack of ability to do it, according to the definitions. Dysphagia is having difficulties with it. And what we will see is that sometimes after somebody has a stroke, or if they've been in some sort of an accident, whether they've fallen off a horse or been in a car accident, that a portion of the brain will have an injury, and as a result, they will have difficulty finding the right word. And depending on where in the brain, these things can look very different. I can tell you that my dad had a rather large stroke as a very young man, and afterwards had dysphagia. And I will also be honest and say that when we saw my son lose language and saw him struggle to get back to language, I was asking questions about this and saying, how is this related? I would never assume, because they're still figuring out with autism what happens in regressive autism, and there are some cases that I've heard of children who potentially or do have a brain injury. So you may be in a meeting talking with an expert about your child who has autism, and they may use these terms. But generally, I think it's considered that autism is not in the same category of brain injury. You know, we get down to semantics about what is a brain injury, what happens, and do they know with autism. So it isn't always, this term isn't always or frequently used with autism, but if somebody is using it, you definitely want to ask some questions about what is it that you think is going on in my child, and I would definitely pursue that if people are using these terms. It is a little outside the norm of how it is languaged with autism. So if someone is using the terms, you definitely want to ask about it. But ultimately, though, you're looking at a lot of the same things, regardless of the cause of the difficulty for what the speech is happening. We want to overcome it, right? And I can remember in those years when there were speech therapists who were working with my dad, and a lot of the techniques that they were using, I did not know at the time were ABA. And we get into these conversations about, well, why is this happening? And while that is a valid question to ask, ultimately we want to get into the solution, which is how are we going to teach to make improvement, right? And we do know that ABA is effective with dysphagia, and it is also effective with the deficit in language that comes with autism and regressive autism. So that's an important thing to know. But again, if you're hearing this term when you're in a medical office, you definitely want to be asking some questions about why are they specifically using this term. Okay, we always have a question of the day. Question of the day is meant to get you thinking and hopefully to participate. We have been asking you guys questions about difficulties in your life, what you would change if you could change. And this is, I'm asking this question because I think this is a part of the journey, and I want your answers. I'm just going to be honest. I'd love to know. I need a better method. But how do you deal with the overwhelming paperwork? Life in general is paperwork intensive, right? Everybody, you go, you take your child to school, and they hand you 12 pieces of paper that you have to fill out. And I don't understand why it's not all automated, but you have to fill out 12 pieces of paper that go to 12 different people at the school, have almost the same information, but not quite. So you still have to engage your brain to do them. And then you turn those in and you get 22 more pieces of paper that you're not sure, okay, do I file this one? Do I keep this one? Is this circular file? What? And then it is tax time. I mean, we're not in the crunch time, but it is. I see people on Facebook saying, wow, I finished my 2012 taxes. I don't really associate with that many people who get them done this early, because most of us are going, oh yeah, that thing. The paperwork is overwhelming to me. And I love business coaches who say, the key to being successful in life is to never deal with the same piece of paper more than once. Oh, that's fabulous. But who has time sometimes? And I realize that we're going more to a digital age, and I'm looking forward to that. But, then you get 1,000 emails a day, right? So how do you deal with the paperwork? What system do you have for sorting through it? And I really have been looking at this lately because I want to be less overwhelmed by the paperwork. There are sections of my life where I am very pristine with the paperwork at different times in my life. Early on with autism, I was told that it was going to be absolutely essential to my child's program that I kept paperwork regimentally, that I had a book that had all of his diagnosis and his medical treatments and anytime we went to the doctor, and another place for receipts. And just the other day I was going through some of this stuff, and I'm glad that I saved it. It is amazing to me to see what I saved, because it reminds me of all the things that we did. And if I ever feel like I'm a slouch as a parent, because I do on occasion, I can go, look at what we did. Look at what we did, and sometimes you forget it. But it's also helpful. It did make the difference, because sometimes it comes down to the legal thing, and I had the paper at the time more than once that made the difference in what my child got. So we have to find a way to deal with the paperwork and not get overwhelmed, and we're taking suggestions. So, and even if you're like me and writing in going, man, I have a room in my house that looks like a paper factory exploded. I just bought a huge filing cabinet for $10 at a garage sale, and it is my new happiest possession in the world, because I can now see tabletop surfaces springing from the mired mess in my home. But we'd love to hear from you. How do you guys deal with it? And like I said, be honest. And if you're saying, no, I'm under the water here, under the paperwork line, that's okay. It's a place where we start, right? But maybe somebody's got a really good system that we can all adopt. Wouldn't that be fabulous? And there are some things that we can talk about, things that people have helped me with. And like I said, for a while, I was absolutely great with the autism paperwork. As it became less essential, it isn't the thing that I need to focus on anymore. So now it's time to focus on other stuff. Paperwork. We'll check in later on Facebook to see what you guys wrote about that. We always have a topic of the week, and our topic, there we go. My fingers aren't working today. Our topic of the week is problem solving. I need to figure out how to problem solve my mouse or my finger, whichever one it is. But in any case, you know, we were talking with Dr. Doreen Graham-Bechet yesterday, and one of you wrote in the question about what do you see in, it might have been last week, I don't know if it was yesterday, what qualities do you see in parents that are getting it done? And she was talking about being somebody who has a sense of humor and a sense of perseverance and is really able to focus and stay focused for a period of time on something. And I was saying that one of the things I noticed early on as I started to meet other autism parents, and I met autism parents who had outcomes that I wanted, that it seemed, and by that I don't mean just the measure of their child's progress, that they were happy and they were married still, and their child seemed happy. No matter what their skill level, their child seemed happy and they had friends. And, you know, I looked at all of that and thought, wow, what's the key to that level of success? And would ask. I'm not afraid to ask those kinds of questions. And what I would hear from those parents is, I would always hear the same phrase, that someone would say, you know, we just made a decision fairly early on that we were going to do whatever it took. And sometimes it was amazing what it ended up taking, but we always looked at it that way, that we were going to do whatever it took. And I do think that that's a key way of looking at problem solving, not thinking, why are these problems arising, but having an expectation there are going to be problems, but we're still going to do whatever it takes. And that is a can-do attitude. And I don't always have it. Heaven knows I do not always have it. But when I can get in that groove, it's so much nicer than any other groove of instead of, you know, feeling like you're being battered by the waves, expecting that there's going to be high tide and low tide, and what do we do about that? It's just a better way of being. So we are talking about problem solving all week long, and we've had a host of different experts in here and more that are coming today and tomorrow to talk about different things that we can do to problem solve. Very excited about that. Now, this morning, we are going to have our myth of the day. We're going to have a school tip. We're going to have Angela Persicke in with us. And we are also going to be joined in just a few minutes via phone by Areva Martin. We've been featuring a wonderful organization all week long, the Special Needs Network, and Areva Martin is really the driving force behind the Special Needs Network. An amazing lawyer, advocate, mom, incredible human being. And we were talking with her via Skype the other day, and we had some Skype issues, so she's going to be joining us via the phone in just a few minutes. Very excited about that, to talk about their yearly Tools for Transformation. It's a conference. I was going to say a symposium. It's a conference. And one of the aspects of it that they're talking about is bullying. And certainly that is something that we all need to problem solve on. So, in any case, lots to talk about today. And I mentioned we were going to be talking about siblings because Angela Persicke is going to be with us later on to talk about siblings. We're going to take a break. Stick with us. We'll be back in a few.
Welcome back. For the month of February, I thought it'd be a great idea to work on an activity that would help your kiddos identify and label emotions. And to help me out today is my good friend, Jamie.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hey there, Jamie.
Hey, how can I help?
Well, the way you can help me out is that because you're a sock puppet, you can do things with your face that I cannot do.
No way.
Totally. The way you can do it is that, you have interchangeable features, which means you can make super exaggerated faces, which makes it easier for kiddos to identify them and to label them.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I have a favor to ask you.
Yeah?
Can you help us out and show us some of your faces you can make?
Of course. Here we go.
you look super mad.
I was super mad.
Can you show us another one?
Sure.
Ooh, you look super sad.
I was super sad.
All right, can you show us one more?
One more.
All right. You look super excited.
I was super excited.
I am too. You know why? Because I really want to show everyone how to make a little buddy like you. So
Yay.
let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are googly eyes, felt, a hot glue gun, imagination, scissors, Velcro, some heavy cardstock, and a clean sock. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to grab your sock. Hopefully it's not dirty and used. It's a clean one. And what you're going to do is that you're going to take your sock, fold it in half like so, and then you're going to take your scissors and cut down. The reason we're doing this is that we're going to make an area for the mouth. The next thing you want to do is you want to trim the inside a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to have an overbite. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just trim a little bit off, not much. Now that this guy is ready, I'm going to take a hard cardstock or note card or whatever you have that's a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half. And what I'm going to do with this is going to be the inside of its mouth, the kind of reinforcement so you're able to move its mouth around. So I'm going to just cut it into an oval. And don't worry, if it's a little too big, you can always trim it. With this sock puppet project, the materials we're using, like the hot glue, is not something for children. So this is something you're going to be doing by yourself and then asking your child to join in once the puppet is ready to go. All right, now that I got that out of the way, let's start gluing. I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue it on the paper. Okay, and once I have that, I'm going to put that in the inside of its mouth, and then I'm going to take the sock and then pull it over the edge and cover it the glue. All right, so now that I have the bottom part done, I'm going to do the same thing to the top. So now that we have this part assembled, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of felt and we're going to cover this area so you don't see all the scraggly stuff. So I have my piece of felt right here. I'm going to fold it in half and I'm just going to cut out a similar oval shape. And again, don't worry if it's too big. You can always trim it after we glue it on. I'm going to glue it inside. All right, now we got pretty much the base of the sock puppet. He's got a moving mouth, but wait, he's got no features. We gotta help him out with that. So what I'm gonna do is I have these pieces of Velcro that I bought that are already sticky on the back, which makes my life a lot easier. And I'm gonna peel this off and place it where I want his eyes. So one there and one there. And then I'm also gonna put them also along his mouth. And then if you want to get fancy, you can put some for his eyebrows as well. So now that I have this, we should be making some features for him. I'm alive! Alive! I had a great time with my buddy Jamie, and I hope you did too. Until next time, bye.
Bye. And don't forget to send us your photos at facebook.com/autismlive.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have Areva Martin on the phone from the Special Needs Network. We were speaking with her on Monday and we lost the connection, but I wanted to have her back with us via phone. She's a very busy lady, but she's got a remarkable event that's coming up, and it's a yearly event called the Tools for Transformation. So first of all, Areva, thank you for taking the time to be with us on the phone.
Thank you for having me back. It's always my pleasure to join you and to connect with your listeners and to talk about something I'm so passionate about. So it's always my pleasure.
It's a wonderful, wonderful event. Tell people about the Tools for Transformation and how they could potentially be involved.
Okay. Tools for Transformation is an annual conference. It's grown to be one of the largest free parent and professional conferences in the state that happens during National Autism Awareness Month, which we all know is April.
Yes.
And this year the conference is 2 days. It's April 12th, Friday, and Saturday, April 13th. And I like to think of the days differently. So we planned the Friday day. It's really our legislative Policy Advocacy Nonprofit Leader Day. So it starts with a big breakfast down at the Radisson by USC University. 450 community leaders, legislators come together to talk about issues that are important in our community. And this year, the whole theme is around the topic that's really gripping the nation, which is gun violence, school safety, bullying, mental health resources, and how do we as a community, embrace our kids, make sure our schools have adequate resources so that when parents send their kids off to school, they're not worried about, someone who comes in and, massacres 20 kids, nor are they worried about the bully on the playground that's going to terrorize, a kid with special needs or, a typical peer. So we're really going to take on those really tough issues that everyone is talking about in this legislative breakfast. We'll have state and national elected officials. We're going to have school board superintendents. We're going to have representatives from all of the various communities that, make up our, that really make decisions about our schools. The next part of that day is a bullying summit. We're going to bring 350 middle school kids together, and we're going to just talk about, get really real about what's happening, what's motivating, what's causing, and what can we as the adults, what can we do? We want to hear from kids. We don't want to just go in with an agenda and tell kids this is what you're going to do. This is an opportunity for a two-way dialogue so we can find out what is it that as parents, as teachers, administrators, community leaders, what can we give to our kids? What can we put on their campuses so that they can start engaging in nonviolent, peaceful interaction and communication with their peers and with each other? So that's the Friday day.
It's wonderful.
Saturday is our Parent Day. I love this day because it's 16 free workshops.
Yeah.
Everything from how to identify a child that has developmental disabilities to what to do with that graduating high school student. How do you transition that student to college, to a job? How do you access insurance under the new SB 946? What does Obamacare, which goes into effect January 14, what does that mean for me and my family? So all of the issues from health to advocacy to interventions to schools to transition will be, talked about from some of the renowned national and local experts in the field on Saturday. And we have a wonderful luncheon. That's an awards luncheon where we give out scholarships to students who've overcome challenges. We'll have book signing with some authors. So it's just a resource fair. So we have about 50 or so vendors out selling books, talking about interventions and therapy. So this is just a community day. It's our day when we get to show the state, show the nation that kids with autism, kids with special needs count, and that their parents and the community are so involved and so engaged in this community that we come together to share information, share resources, and empower. I got to use that word.
Well,
this is an empowerment day.
It absolutely is. And did I hear you say that this is entirely free for parents?
It is absolutely no cost to parents. We don't want parents to have any impediments. And on the full day Saturday, there is child care. So you can bring your child, and we have trained behaviorists, we have licensed therapists, we have college-age volunteers, we have adults, we have a whole program just for your kids. They're engaged with arts and music and dance throughout the day, and we've had as many as 180 kids in this child care for this conference because we don't want parents to say, I can't access information because I don't have anyone to keep my kids. So we feed you, we take care of your kids, we send you home with a bag full of knowledge and information, we inspire, we motivate, and most of all, we just come together and support.
It's absolutely amazing what you do. And again, we wanted to, you do this in Southern California, but we want to talk about if somebody is interested in coming, how do they register?
Registration is already up. With technology, we've gone to a paperless registration. You can go to our website, www.specialneedsnetwork.org. and you'll see a banner running on that website, Tools for Transformation. Click on it. You can register for the full conference. It's both Friday and Saturday. You can register for pieces of a conference. We already have folks who are flying in from Northern California. We have some people coming in from the Midwest who attend this conference every year. It does fill up. I was told that we're already around 600 or so registrants. Wow. We usually tap out around 2,000.
Okay.
So, there's lots of room left now, which is the good news, but this conference does fill up. And we're just so happy to be able to, like I said, during the month of April, and we have a lot of autism awareness activities going on during that month, but this conference has become a signature piece in the Southern California community because it does bring not just the autism community together, but it brings that broader advocacy community. And it's so important that we collaborate, that we're not in a little silo, that, the autism folks aren't just in their little autism silo, but that we're making connections with folks who are working on mental health, folks who are working on gun control, folks who are working on school safety, folks who are working on health reform, because all of those areas touch our families. So it's important that they know who we are, we know who they are, and that we're dialoguing. And that's what happens during these 2 days.
Well, Areva, I meant it when I said it. You're a remarkable woman, and what you do for this community is amazing. I thank you for everything that you do, and I want to encourage parents who can get to this conference. So often we see, a conference and go, oh, that looks fabulous, but the cost of childcare and the cost of the conference and time away from your family makes it next to impossible. But Areva, you do it right. And it's, like I said, it's amazing what you do. So I hope that parents take the opportunity to register before it gets too full.
Well, thank you, Shannon. We love you guys. We love the work that you do because getting the word out is, the biggest part of it. Because you can have the most fabulous event on the planet, and if no one knows about it, they won't get there. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to spread the word. I look forward to coming back in April, National Autism Awareness Month, and just talking about, again, so many of the things that are happening throughout our community and just how those wonderful stories of triumph. I think that's what makes community so special.
Absolutely. Areva, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and we'll look forward to having you in the studio in April.
Fantastic. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye. So that was Areva Martin, a really incredible woman, as I said, a lawyer, an advocate, a mom, an incredible woman who does so much for our community. Check out Special Needs Network and register to go to this amazing, amazing event, the Tools for Transformation Conference. We'll look forward to getting more information about the things that arise at that conference and having Areva with us in the studio in April. We're going to take a break and come back with the myth of the day. Stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back. It is time for the myth of the day. We have a little, I'm not going to sing it, but we have a little song that we sing for myth of the day. In any case, I want to tell you a little story that years ago, I think when my son was in kindergarten, I remember being at one of the many IEP meetings that I was attending back then, and somebody saying to me some sort of innocuous sentence, but you know how sometimes your skin's a little thin when they're talking about your child, and somebody, it was probably along the lines of, well, he has difficulty attending and frequently will be engaged in seeking some sort of, tactile thing while making noises that are disruptive to the classroom. And they said it in such a way that it just rankled. And my response was, yes, he has autism. And, I was being sarcastic and being a smart, what. But we talked about, we read a letter yesterday from a parent who found that after her child was in a classroom for several months and in a conversation with the teacher said, perhaps you should seek a diagnosis for your child. And the mom was in just a daze saying to the teacher, she does have a diagnosis, which you should know because it's there in the paperwork. And I think that we've all had some sort of moment like that when we expected that someone knew something and they don't. And so I do think that it's good every once in a while to say things about, well, my child's diagnosis about autism, whatever. But I think there's a very careful line. And that's what I want to talk about today, that there's this myth that once there is the A word used in conjunction with a child, and this is where the stigma attached to the A word comes in. Once that A word is used, that there are things that can't change. That once you've used that word, there's a little piece of tape and it's like, oh, here are the things that can no longer be changed. And in actuality, when I said that to whoever it was that I said at the IEP meeting and said, yes, he has autism, it was as though I was saying that too. As though I was saying, the subtext was, yes, and you shouldn't fault him for that because that's how he is, who he is, and that's never going to change. Now, I do think the first part of it is true. You shouldn't fault him for that. It's not because he disregards you, that he is behaving in this manner. But the rest of it needs to be shoved into the ocean because it's not useful to anyone, and it's not the truth. It's a myth that things can't change after an autism diagnosis. It isn't at all the truth. We know scientifically that nothing could be further from the truth, that if we change the variables involved in teaching this child, literally the sky's the limit of what we can teach if we're patient enough and if we focus on specific things. So our whole topic this week is problem solving. And I know that when we asked you guys the other day and said, you know, what are the biggest problems that you're facing in your family and your world today, you had a whole host of things that you were writing about, and some of them were funding. And those certainly seem insurmountable, and sometimes it seems as though it's never going to be anything different, but we do know that things change. Yep, sometimes financially things get worse before they get better, but over time things do change. I think about my grandparents and what they went through in the Great Depression and what it must have felt like for them, that this will never be different than it is now. And my parents were both born during the Depression and had that sort of mentality of, well, you know, this is the possibility of things. We're going through financial difficulties as a world right now, but I do think it's important to remember that things don't ever stay the same. And then when we apply this to our children, if your child is, and many of you wrote in and said sleep issues, eating issues, challenging behavior issues that were happening surrounding your children, I do think it's important that we come from that same place of understanding this is what's happening right now. Absolutely no question. It's challenging, it's difficult, and it feels like it's never going to change. But the truth, the truth is so different from what it feels like. The truth is that there's all kinds of possibilities to change what's happening. You have to be willing to be patient. You have to be willing to work for them. And a lot of the time, I was going to say sometimes, but a lot of the time, you need to get some support and some help. And that might create a whole other issue and problem. But taking just one thing at a time, asking yourself, okay, what can I do today? What's the most, and the reason why I asked you guys, what's the biggest problem you're facing? Because that would probably be where you want to start. If your child is not eating, it might be that your child's not sleeping, your child's not eating, your child is biting, your child is hitting, right? You got the laundry list of all the things that are going on. What's the biggest problem that has to be faced first? And in different households, it's going to be different things. I shared the other day that for me, I had a laundry list, and I said the thing that has to change first before any of the other things can change is the sleep. Because if he doesn't sleep, I can't sleep, which means I can't tackle the first four things. I'm not going to be equipped. There's only so much a person can do, right? So understanding, though, that you can change the sleep issues. They do it every day of the week with kids on the autism spectrum. You can change the eating issues. I don't think there has been a single child that they haven't been successful at creating progress with eating issues. Same thing with toileting, the same thing with any kind of aggression or self-aggression. There is always progress to be had if you want to target those things. Now, if you're sitting there and saying, yes, but that's very easy for you to say, I don't have funding. I do want to remind you that there are sources. We talked about this. We had a special guest with us on Tuesday from italk.org, TAALK.org, and they have something called Tuesday's Treasures, and every week they feature a different funding source for different things to do with autism. Some weeks it's iPads. Other weeks, you know, I know that they have featured before the United Healthcare Children's Fund, which you can get a $5,000 grant, and you do not have to have their insurance. But let's say that you're having a problem with your child not sleeping, and you want to have a BCBA come in and you say, it's just, I don't have any money to pay for this. You absolutely can apply for a grant, and that's just one of many sources. So yeah, it does mean, okay, well, my new problem is I got to fill out that paperwork, but I want us to be able to embrace the idea that there's always a way. always a way. And when we get into this thinking of, well, there are things that can't change, and then we attach that to autism, we're doing a disservice to ourselves, we're doing a disservice to our children, and really we're doing a disservice to the world. In that moment that I said to that education person, yeah, he's doing that because he has autism, I was furthering the notion that we can't do something about that. And I try to be more careful about that. And be mindful of how I word it to remind everybody he has autism and we're not doing the right thing to teach him differently yet. But we can. We absolutely can. I love to say on the show, si se puede, we can do this. We really can. It does mean we have to hold hands, though, and don't think you can do it by yourself. Forgive yourself for ever thinking that you could have done it by yourself. That's a hard one. I know, I work on that on a daily basis, but we need help and support, all of us. But we can change. It just depends on what we want to change, and are we willing to take help and support to do it? If you need help, write to us. We'll help to point you in a direction so that you can get more help and support along the way. You will have to work with us, because we'll give you names and places that you could potentially talk to, sites that you can look at, but you'll have to work with that and see what, work with us. In any case, there's our myth for today, squashed. We're going to take a break and come back and look at your answers to the question of the day. Excuse me, we talked about, our question today is, how do you deal with the overwhelming paperwork? Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. You're live on Autism Live, and I've got my friend Jennifer here. I'm so excited she's here to help me. She's got a son named Dylan, I got a son named Jeff. We got all sorts of allergy issues. And a lot of you say, what the heck can we do to eat breakfast that's not full of carbs?
And getting my son to eat vegetables.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is a vegetable. So we're gonna eat vegetables today. And
All right.
so what we're making is a zucchini muffin. So let's go ahead and get started. So we just dumped in our zucchinis. You can start with less if you wanna graduate your kid to actually eating healthy. We're gonna do some eggs. And again, I use the organic cage-free eggs. So there's our eggs. I'm going to add in our oil. Again, I use a high heat oil, and the reason why I use a high heat oil, because when you bake, you want to make sure you're using an oil that doesn't disintegrate, because when oil gets too hot and it's not meant to get hot, it becomes toxic. So you got to be careful with your oils. So there goes our maple syrup, and again, organic maple syrup. What we're going to add next is cinnamon and our baking soda, baking powder to our mix. There's a lot of variations on flours. A lot of our kids are allergic to wheat, so there's a lot of things we can do to make this SCD, specific carbohydrate compliant, or just gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free. And flaxseed meal. Flaxseed meal is a great resource for extra fiber within the kids' diets. We're just gonna turn on this fabulous, wonderful KitchenAid, and we're good. It's a great, great looking batter. And what we're gonna do is talk a little bit about baking, where almost everything is aluminum, and aluminum can be a problem for some kids, especially kids that can't methylate and take the toxins out with their body. But if you've got, like me, I've got muffin tins, so I have the ability to just simply put in some cupcake holders, and that actually holds that together if I want to freeze it. Hey, nice work. Those look good, but wait till you see them when they're done.
All right.
So go ahead and pull them out. Here are the fabulous muffins. Now, if you've got a sensory kid that doesn't like vegetables, I can already ice by the zucchini. Remember what I told you earlier. Dissolve that simply by peeling off the green layer, and then it will cook literally translucent. Such a nice golden brown. I love how the texture is. We know that the breakfast can be a challenge. This makes that process a whole lot easier for you and your family. I really appreciate all the feedback. We definitely want to hear from you for our next segment. If you'd like us to cook something or maybe make an old favorite and that's allergy-free, we can do that here on Autism Live. So give us your feedback. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page like everybody, facebook.com/autismlive. And also you can reach Taka on the Taka website at Taka Now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Autism Live.
We say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to talk a little bit about our question of the day, which was, how do you deal with overwhelming paperwork? And face it, this takes on so many different aspects, because sometimes it's just the filling out of the paperwork, sometimes it's the physical amount of the paperwork, and other times it's being able to access the piece of paper when you want it. Like, what is your filing system? How do you, there's so much about it that's overwhelming. Okay, somebody wrote in and said, sometimes I'm great at putting it into a 3-ring, other times I have a pile. My 15-year-old sorts by date. When the pile gets too big, then I put them in the binder with a light blue cardstock in between. Works smashingly. Current is always on top for reference, and I label eval. So that, I'm guessing, is just for the things having to do with autism. And I'm wondering, I'm a big fan of Pinterest, that I am a little mildly addicted to Pinterest right now. And my new thing has been looking this up and finding different ways that you can organize your paperwork, and been looking and pinning a couple of different suggestions that other moms and other parents have done. And there was one lady in particular who had all these different colored binders, and on the, must own a label maker, but on each one of the spines of the binders, it said what they deal with. And I think my binders would look different than hers, because I would have a binder that would just be autism. But instead of trying to put everything into a file cabinet, because sometimes things don't get in the file cabinet, I love this idea, though, of having the pile and then asking the 15-year-old to sort them by date, and then putting the cardstock, I'm guessing that the cardstock goes between different dates. Very interesting, but I would want to have them in different categories. Very, very interesting. And they said that they label the evaluations. Very interesting. Somebody else said, first I just take a deep breath and then plow through it and keep it all together in a portfolio for the year. I've tried that before too, and where it's separate, that I just keep the year in one of those expandable folders. That's not a bad way of doing it. I used to have an easier time when I was doing that, so thank you for reminding me of that. They also say, I seem to always carry a copy of my daughter's IEP around with me for a year so that it doesn't get lost. Bless your heart. I do have a friend who literally has it in a sheet protector taped to the wall, like not even pretty taped, almost like caution tape, that, in case of an emergency, and it's there, and it's not even a joke. And they always know where the IEP is, which is amazing to me. I'm going to one of our other sites to see what some of the other people wrote. But really ideal to know where the IEP is. I will admit that I am not as good about knowing where my IEP is, and I frequently say, can I get another copy? I know I've got a copy of it somewhere, but that's not a good plan. That is not the way in which to do that. Okay, on one of our other sites, loving the picture that we have up there. Somebody said, I use a binder to organize school IEP meetings and doctor paperwork. I do think, and I used to keep that all together. There's actually an organization here in Southern California that when your child is diagnosed with any kind of special need, they invite you to come to a free meeting, and they give you a binder. And it already has a ruler on it that has a 3-hole punch on the ruler, and it already has categories so that you're ready to put all the stuff in the first year that your child has been diagnosed. And they have additional classes where you can go to figure out how to optimize. And for a couple of years, I was Johnny on that. And like I said, it really made a difference. Somebody else says, I use colored folders with pockets in them, each color for a different purpose, doctor, school, respite, but like the binder idea too. I'm loving these. I'm absolutely loving them. Somebody else, and bless your heart, said, I use them to wipe my you-know-what. And sometimes we all feel like doing that with the paperwork, don't we? So I'm feeling you there. Okay, another says, binders are best, only keep what's important, shred the rest, and keep it updated. Okay, now see, here is a problem for me. How do you know what's important? Autism Speaks, in their 100-day kits, one of the things on their wish list of things to acquire if you're starting out with autism is to get yourself a really good scanner that can scan up to 30 pages at a time. And their suggestion is that you whenever you get paperwork, you put it into the scanner and you find a file on your desktop and then you shred the document so that it's on your computer. The only problem with that is that then I want to do a backup, because what happens if the computer dies, these things, or you lose your, but I hear that those, especially those cloud devices, there's Carbonite and a couple other places where you can pay a yearly fee and have storage of your documents in cyberspace. That those work really well, so that if you lose your computer, you still have all your stuff. I will admit that I have not done that yet. I got the little the backup drive, and guess what? The backup drive died. So there you have it. Okay, but I love this idea of shredding. Just got a paper shredder the other day. Somebody else says, put them in a box and label it keepers. I would have 22 of those, so that's a hard thing. Someone else says 2-drawer filing cabinet, 1 drawer for each child, that's how you do it. I like that. That's a clever idea. Someone else says, my hubby is the most organized man I've ever known, so I use him. And it is nice to have such a huge support. That's a lovely thing, We've talked before. We've had Moira Giammatteo on the show. She's a TACA mom, and she talks about the whole idea of who's the project manager. You have to appoint somebody in the family to be the project manager for autism. And that after that, you need to figure out and play to everybody's strengths. So if there's something, if somebody's really good at advocating and speaking up in a difficult situation, then that's the person who is in charge of certain parts of the IEP. And if you have somebody who's really good at paperwork and they're not the same people, division of labor that goes to strengths, right? Making sense. So an organized hubby, what a lovely thing. We had Marianne Halpern in the studio yesterday. She's a celebrity photographer, and of course, she and Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson have put together to make it's a fundraising opportunity, but it's a beautiful opportunity for 30 families to get their child's picture taken with Marianne and to get the portrait. And the cost of it is $297. Is donated completely to Autism Care and Treatment Today to give for grants for families who need help and support. So a lovely, lovely gesture. And Marianne was here with her husband yesterday. He was not on the show, but he was in the studio, and it was so sweet to see them. And I love it when you see two people who are in love and will talk about each other's strengths. And she was bragging about the fact that he could cook. Just absolutely loved that. And when we have strengths, let's play to them. And I love that this mom is saying organized husband, and that he does that for her, and that she's greatly, greatly appreciative. So wonderful. Keep them coming in, because I'm hearing these binder things and hearing the drawers. These are all good suggestions, and we all need some suggestions for the paperwork. We are going to take a break and go to the A word. Before we do that, though, I just want to remind everybody that there is an event that's happening here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders next Tuesday. They're having an open house with people from the organization Lineagen are going to be here, and it's in the evening on Tuesday, February 19th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here in Tarzana, California. And if you're in Southern California, this might be of interest to you, because they're going to be talking about doing genetic testing as a means of, greater research, first of all, that it's going to help to be able to look at progress and identify different things that are going on genetically for a child, and maybe see if there's a correlation between progress. But for a family, it really is an opportunity to hear about how genetic testing may help you to create a program that is the most efficient for your child. That's really what it's all about. Now, tomorrow on the show, when we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox on during our regular segment with him, we're also going to be joined by at least one, if not two members of Lineagen who are going to join us via Skype to talk about exactly what it is that they're going to be doing. So if you're not able to make it to the Tuesday event because you live someplace other than Southern California, you're going to want to tune in tomorrow. Right in the bottom of the second hour, we're going to be joined with somebody from Lineagen and Dr. Tarbox so that we can really get an understanding of what this is about. And if you are in the Southern California area, it's a great opportunity to come and meet people, meet other families, and get to talk to the people from Lineagen face to face. So you do need to register for that, and I believe you can register for that right by going to centerforautism.com, and on the front page there's a tab, a box that you can go to register. All right, but it is time for the A Word. This is an amazing documentary being made here by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, as he begins his early intensive behavioral intervention in his home. At this point in the series, he is about 2.5, and he's about 8 months, I guess he must be more than 2.5, but he's about 8 months into ABA therapy. And take a look. It features a lot of different things in this episode that are really exciting, not the least of which is joint attention, and being able to see that there is a shift in this little boy, that he is now starting to be engaged in his environment in a way that he previously wasn't. So take a look.
Look, good talking. Sassy. Sassy's the bird, yeah.
Independently tacting and joint attention is a big deal. The reason is that tacting is socially reinforced and doesn't have a tangible reinforcer.
Look, good talking. Sassy.
Unlike manding, where the reward is getting what you're asking for. This is why Jack Riley has been requesting items. He's immediately reinforced. Tacting, on the other hand, is making an observation in your environment and then sharing with others what you experience. So the reward in tacting is the attention and social interaction. Kids with autism many times aren't naturally socially motivated in the way typically developing children are. Here, Jack Riley is simultaneously tacting with joint attention. Jack Riley looks at the TV, points, and labels the characters. Then he looks at Jessica to check that she is sharing the experience with him, and then looks back at the TV. A key identifying sign of autism is a child's lack of joint attention. They don't initiate having a joint experience, for example, pointing, or responding to other social cues like following a parent's gaze. The way we encourage tacting behaviors is by first practicing it in a contrived manner, like teaching labels, asking,
Well, what is it? Okay, thank you.
We teach them labels so they have words to communicate with. The hope is to fade the prompts until the language happens naturally and often.
The end.
That's the next Lion King. Circle of life.
The end. All right. It's over. Yeah.
Okay. It's all over. It's over, buddy.
You want to play? Do you want to play? Say yes. Yes. Good. Do you want to play? Yes. Okay, here. Do you want one fire truck or two? Two. Two. Okay, here you go. Fire truck. Fire trucks, yeah. Okay, Jack Riley, one more minute, okay? Say okay. Okay. All right. All right, buddy. Come over here. Come sit down. Ow.
Jessica and Jack Riley are continuing to work on identifying categories since he knows so many labels now.
Hey, mister. That was good sitting, but you gotta face me, okay? Turn around, turn around. Thanks. Do you want bubbles, phone, or fire truck? Whoa. Say I. Whoa. Okay. Toys. Hold on, buddy. I know. Hold on. Ready? Say I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. Give me a vehicle. Vehicle. Good job. What is it? Vehicle. Nice. Good job, kiddo. Right. Hold on. Hold on. Ready? Say I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. Give me animal. Good job. What is it? Animals. Good job. There you go. Here's another sticker for you. Give me toys. Toys. Nice job. What is it? Toys. Yeah, but what is it? Say toys. No, say toys. Toys. Good. What is it? Toys. There you go, mister. Nice job. Give me animal. Good job. What is it? Animals. Nice. All right. Last one. Give me. Hey, look at me. Look at me. Good job. Give me food. Cat. Nice job. What is it? Animals. No, this one. What's this one? Animals. No. What is this? Food. Food. There we go. All right. Here you go. Buffalo. Yeah. There you go, mister. Do you want more Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? More? Ow. Do you want more? Boy. Say I. I want boy. Okay, we're gonna sing first. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Knees and toes. What's next? Eyes and ears and mouth and nose, head, knees, toes, knees and toes. Yay! That was very good. High fives. Oh, too slow. High five. Ah, too slow. There you go. Ah, yay! You did it. Good boy. Okay, I get you your peekaboo wild, okay? Okay, where's my peekaboo wild? Let me go get it for you. There you go. So silly. You're the silliest. He's gotten so much better. He knows the words now, which is really, really cool. And it helps him with labeling his body parts too. So a lot of the body parts I think he learned from the song before we even started on them.
Knowing the song also prepares Jack Riley for preschool. By knowing the words and movements, he will be able to participate in social activities that his peers will be doing.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest joining us here live in the studio is BCBA Angela Persicke. So thrilled to have you here.
Me too.
And we should say that you are, tell us your title again for Autism Research Group.
I am the Assistant Director of Autism Research Group.
Okay. I was going to say Associate Director, and I was like, I'm going to get it wrong, so let's say that. So we were talking, we traded some emails earlier in the week about the fact that our topic this entire week is problem solving. And we asked all of you what are the biggest challenges that you're facing, and a lot of you wrote in and said sibling issues. That is a big consideration, and I was so thrilled that you guys said that, because while I never forget that my child doesn't yet have a sibling, and we want to, and I want to know more about this, and I know that a lot of you struggle with these kinds of issues, and Angela said I'd love to come in and talk about sibling issues.
Definitely.
So where do we start?
Well, I just want to start out by saying that a lot of times it seems like there are a lot of problems with siblings, especially when there's a child on the spectrum. And so it's, learning to balance time between the two children. You have this one child that is getting all kinds of hours of therapy and different schedules, and they both are going to school, and having to balance the time is really important. But also, my standpoint is that these siblings could be utilized in so many ways, and the children on the spectrum are lucky in some respects that they do have another child right there in the house to practice generalizing skills and working on different skills. And so I come from that stance that the other sibling or siblings, those are great to have around.
Right, and I love that you bring that up, that they can be utilized, and that it can actually serve two purposes, because not only are they helping the other child, but it's a way to keep that the sibling who isn't on the spectrum involved. And I can hear, though, parents saying, but my child who's not on the spectrum, isn't that a waste of their time? Aren't they having to be the teacher? And I would think, but tell us, isn't that kind of ABA experience great for all kids?
Oh, definitely. I definitely believe that even if the child or the sibling is acting as a teacher, that is helping with so many of their other skills, like being able to explain how to do things, which is something that a lot of children have difficulty with, because if they are able to do something, it's not that easy to explain it to others. So being a teacher and having to help another person is a huge skill set that's very important for the future for these children. So and then ABA skills in general are very important for every child. I think every child could use those skills.
I don't know a single parent that we're friends with that hasn't had an opportunity to see the kinds of things that the therapist taught my child, who didn't say, wow, all kids really could benefit from this. That's really the truth of it. And I was mentioning the other day that you have a play date and you have the therapist there with the neurotypical child and your child, and often the parent will say, this is awesome. I've been trying to figure out how to get them to take turns, and it's so great that your therapist is teaching my child too. When can we do this again? They actually, most people, not all, are really into it and think that it's great. So imagine what happens to a child who's neurotypical, who's around this all the time, and being taught how to language their emotions, being taught how to effectively communicate their ideas and their thoughts and their feelings. It really is, it has the potential to be amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, of course, there are going to be times when the siblings are going to be frustrated.
Of course. I mean, all the time. And just with typical siblings, too. It's just, siblings interact in ways that are very different from peers. Very different. And that's something that you have to understand is, too, that the way siblings relate to each other will be very different from the way your child will relate to other peers. But that being said, it's still going to be difficult sometimes when the child gets frustrated, especially the sibling. Like, he's not listening to me, he won't play with me. And so going back to giving the sibling the skills to help prompt the other child to playing with him or her, and those are really great skills that that child can use every day too. So we also don't want to focus too much on having the sibling be the therapist, and that's really important. And so when you're working with siblings, you want to make sure that the child or the sibling is interacting in a way that's appropriate for a child to act. So making sure that the sibling is not actually being the therapist, but giving the sibling the skills to interact with the child more appropriately.
Keeping your expectations, I think, in an appropriate place. That it's not as though the sibling who's neurotypical is going to be able to run the lesson.
No.
That we would never have that kind of an expectation, even though sometimes it seems like sometimes the siblings, because they've had to deal with things anyway and they've gotten used used to, oh, well, we do this because my brother or sister does this, that their level of being able to cope, it's like they have an extra backpack that they can take skills out of. We wouldn't put an expectation on that child to be able to take the lead on anything. But, sometimes they are able to say something to the other sibling and get a response where we couldn't.
Exactly.
I'm always looking for a child to be able to tell my child when they're doing something that isn't appropriate. We have friends that there's 3 boys in the family, and recently we were at an event and I was watching how the 3 boys, because they're all around the same age, and they're all neurotypical, and when the youngest one or the middle one would do something and the oldest one would go, don't do that. People are going to think this if you do that, and would correct their behavior. And I was saying, oh my gosh, I need a peer to do that for my son, because they're at that age, I've talked about it before, where they all have to be cool, drives me buggy, but a sibling can do that. And that's very appropriate in when they're neurotypical, and very appropriate, I would imagine, if one is on the spectrum and one isn't.
Of course, and in that case too, this is something that you see all the time, siblings doing, and peers, and who knows better of what is appropriate for that little group of kids than peers and siblings. So we obviously are not in their direct world, so we can't identify the things that may be appropriate socially with their peers.
Right. And honestly, in watching, because I'm always, when I see a bunch of kids, I'm always watching like a hawk about, how are they reacting to each other, and what works and what doesn't work, and hoping that I can glean something and come back and teach it. But it moves too fast at a certain age, and it morphs and it changes, and I just don't get it entirely. But also acknowledging the fact that the way we would teach something it's just different. When I think about the oldest one saying, knock it off, and he nudged him a little bit, we would never do that, and it would not be appropriate for us to. But leaving them a little bit of leeway to be able to communicate in an appropriate way. And realizing, though, that I think sometimes as autism parents, we tend to be so afraid of the effect of everything, and that no matter where your kids are in life, whether they're on the spectrum, not on this, there are going to be times when they're not going to get along.
No, of course.
There's got to be a reasonable expectation that sometimes it just isn't going to be hearts, flowers, and roses.
Exactly. And as a parent, you should also remember that when your siblings are arguing about something, try to see both sides of this. Because a lot of times parents will side with the child with autism just because, like, well, he has autism, he doesn't know any better. But from a sibling point of view, that will be like, well, what do you mean? Like, he hit me, you know? And so really looking at what is going on in the situation and taking it as, like, these are 2 children playing together. So how would we approach this with just 2 children playing together? And instead of making excuses for one of the children or the other, and that helps for the sibling to get the attention they need as well, and to feel like it's not always their fault.
And so maybe would we then, I'm just thinking in that scenario, the child saying, he hit me, would we then be saying, here's how you say this to him, or do this to tell him that he can't, or if he goes to hit you, you move away? We give him tools.
We'd give them tools, because especially if the other sibling, the sibling with autism, doesn't have language, you have to give the neurotypical sibling the tools to be able to communicate to the child that that's not okay. So even so teaching them, to walk away instead of pushing back, or to go and talk to mom and say, oh, he's hitting me now, so what should I do, instead of getting in this larger fight.
Hitting back.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, and saying and languaging it for that child, will tell him to say this or whatever. I think that's a really important distinction to make, and actually I want to talk more about that, but we should take a break, and we'll come back more with Angela Persicke after these messages.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign a petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon. What you're gonna do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're gonna grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm gonna flip it around and take another piece of tape. And what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite. With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
with ABA,
The possibilities are infinite.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest in the studio with us right now is BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Angela Persicke. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
And we're talking about siblings, and mostly we're talking about when one or more siblings is on the spectrum and one or more siblings is not on the spectrum. And because a lot of you had written in earlier in the week and we asked you what's the biggest problem you're facing right now, and a lot of the things that you wrote back were about having to do with the siblings. And sometimes it was, as we just were talking about, the sibling feeling left out. And other times it's making the relationship work between the two children. And right before we went to break, we were talking about how important it is, you brought up, how important it is to not always side with the child who has the autism diagnosis. And earlier today, we were talking about the fact that we need to get out of the mindset of saying, well, they have autism, as if it's this static line that you put down and it means nothing's going to change because of it. And we certainly don't want to do that with our other children and make it seem to them, well, yes, he hit you because he's going to hit you because he has autism. And it's easy to fall into that trap. And so you were suggesting that instead, make it fair. We were talking during the break about, because we've been talking about this all week long, this idea of we want our kids to be treated equally. We want others to see our children on the autism spectrum and give them the same kind of treatment, but sometimes there have to be accommodations. But Dr. Doreen Grampiche brought up yesterday, it's important for things to be fair. That, when somebody wears glasses, we're not going to treat them differently, but we're not going to expect them to do the same thing that we're doing. If they wear glasses, that we're going to give them the glasses to be able to do it. So how do we, if we're new to autism and we're new to ABA, let's start with how do we language this to siblings so that because we don't necessarily have to use the autism term, but to make it fair, that sometimes there's going to be accommodations for the other child. Is there a way to put that?
I would say start by saying, your brother or sister is different, but not because of one reason or another.
Right.
But and that doesn't mean that we're gonna treat him differently than you. But at times we may need to because there are different needs that he has than you. But also to say that. He's different in that he thinks and he'll act a little differently than you, and we need to work as a team, as a family team to make it so that everybody can have a fair opportunity, including him, but maybe he isn't able to communicate the same way you are. So, and still that's a little wordy, but just saying he's different, but we are going to try to give you both the opportunities, the same opportunities.
Yes, but I think hearing the child that's not on the spectrum, like you were saying before the break, hearing them when they're saying this happened, you know, and not saying, well, it's just because. Now, so if we're starting ABA and we're new to ABA and we've got the child on the spectrum, we've got a child or more than one child who's not on the spectrum, and you were mentioning that we can utilize this relationship between them to further things. What kinds of things would we want to, would we just want to plug that child into every lesson, or are there lessons that we would start with?
I think starting out, it would be important to work on play skills together. For a lot of our children, especially if they're 2 years old when they receive their diagnosis, the priority is language and play skills, because those are what you see typical 2-3-year-olds doing, playing. So independent play, or just being able to play independently next to the sibling is important. And then working into having them share and take turns and actually interacting together. And there are all different types of play, like functional pretend play, socio-dramatic play, many different types of play. And so working with just even the very beginning, having your children play appropriately is where I would start with siblings, but also working on some of the other skills and how to generalize those skills into the environment. So say your child is working on just labeling items in the environment. You can work with the sibling too to have bring items out, and even helping the child prompt. Or using prompting strategies. So say, okay, bring this truck over to your brother. And if he doesn't say truck, in 5 seconds, say something like, say truck. So even working on little skills like that, without actually teaching the child, again, to be the therapist, but interacting a lot with toys. And as a sibling too, you want to be able to play with your other sibling. And so focusing on play skills from the beginning is really, really important.
Okay. And I would imagine that because all of our kids are different and all of our sibling situations are different and the ages are different, that, in some cases the sibling's going to be older, in some cases the sibling's going to be younger, and just when you're using that example about saying to a neurotypical child, here, take the truck to your brother, that could be on either side, right? Because you could say that to the child who's on the spectrum, take the truck to your brother, and you're working on a whole other set of skills. So depending upon what age, but for parents, a lot of times, we're new to this, we don't know. Is this the kind of thing, can we go to the BCBA that's working on our case and say, hey, we want to begin to include our child because we want to build the sibling relationship and we want them to feel included? If I would hope that the BCBA would bring it up to begin with, but if they don't, you can go to your BCBA and say, what kinds of things should I use and how should I use them, and they'll show you?
Yes, and the BCBA should have easy to use skill sets for the parent, and we'll be able to teach the parent how to prompt both children and how to interact with both children. And also it's important to provide reinforcement for the sibling as well. And so it's really important to make sure you are attending to both children in those situations. And so if one child has a token board or something like this that he's getting, or points or whatever it is, break for activity, you have to make sure that the sibling has those opportunities as well.
And it may not look the same, because if the child is 8 years older, that token board is going to be entirely different, or if they're 8 months younger, it's going to look different. But something, equity, we need to have things be fair. I keep going back to that thing about being fair. Fair isn't equal, and when you put fair into it, doesn't necessarily look like the same thing. It might look completely different.
And I always feel really really lucky when I work with a family who has siblings. There are multiple children in the family, because there's so many more opportunities for social interaction and for play skills and even language to, that we wouldn't necessarily use with a therapist talking to the child or the mom talking to the child. And so different kinds of interactions and initiating play too. And so it's, to me, I feel like having the other siblings is never a hassle. They're always they're always a great asset to the treatment.
Okay.
So and any BCBA will most likely say the same thing. So I'm asking your BCBA, how can we include the sibling in these sessions, or even maybe one session a week? How can we work on the sibling relationship and play skills, social skills during the session with the sibling? And in this case, the therapy session may need to be structured a little differently. So it may look more like a play date. And the BCBA might actually tell the parent to just let your children play how they would normally play, to see at first, like, are they interacting at all? Are they playing at all? Is every interaction just one child directing the other? Because that's really important to see too. How are they interacting right now, and how can we work with the skills they have right now to build more appropriate relationship?
And I just want to do another shout out to all of our parents that are out there, because I do feel like I know what my experience was like being at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders as a parent, and you guys were constantly prompting me and saying, okay, we need to see more play dates, or we need to do this, or whatever, and I didn't have to think too hard. I had to learn, and it was important that I upheld, and I didn't get it right. I still don't get it right. And you guys were patient with me, but I never felt like I needed to drive the bus. I was very well taken care of in terms of that, and I'm a control freak, so you really have to be leading in order for me to follow. And otherwise I'm like, and still trying to grab the wheel. But I think about so many parents out there, and I meet so many parents and have an opportunity to talk to them where that isn't always the case. And I want to remind all of you to advocate for yourselves. We teach our children to advocate for themselves. We have to advocate for ourselves and for our families and for our kids. And if it's not coming up in conversation with your BCBA or with your ABA provider, bring it up. Bring it up and suggest. Unbelievably, I will hear parents say all the time, oh, well, we stopped doing ABA therapy because we just had our other kids, and we had to go to Little League, and we had to go to ballet, and we had swimming lessons, and I had to do holiday shopping. And I'm horrified, because I'm thinking, why aren't you having a therapist go? And then in the next breath, you know what they'll say is, but I don't know what to do because I'm at my wit's end. I try to take them to Little League, and he runs around the field, and he bit another kid, and I go, see, but that's where you should have taken the therapist. And I feel bad for them, because I don't think anybody said that to them. But I'm saying it to all of you. Bring the therapist to the Little League field with you. Bring the therapist holiday shopping, because that's when your kid is going to melt down and you need help. It's all too easy to sit at home and have a therapist do something and have it work there, and you go, wow, but that's not going to work when I'm at Walmart in a line and there's 38 people behind me, and somebody is making a noise on their phone and my child wants to go see what it is. We need to get these things in real life.
Yes, and it's important that, as BCBAs, we go in and we often come up with this treatment plan, but yes, voice what you want. And if you're not seeing a lot of problems with the siblings at home interacting, then yes, you do need more play dates. You do need to take your children to see how the child is interacting with peers, because, like I said earlier, peer and sibling relationships are very different. So maybe the siblings have play together great and everything is fine, they're interacting just fine, but when your child is with other peers at school, he isn't initiating conversations. He's not engaging in any social interaction. He's not even playing with the kids on the playground. Maybe he's off by himself. So it's really important to bring up these different concerns you have to the behavior analyst. And as behavior analysts, we work in the world you are in. So
That's
we
the
are
way it
right
needs
there
to
in
be.
your world, what you do every day. And if you have a problem going to the grocery store or
the post office,
the post office, even getting in the car.
Yep.
That's where we'll
yes.
be with you.
Absolutely, because we have problems getting into the car. We've had a question come in from a viewer. We're going to take a quick break and come back and address that. Stick with us.
I am Karen Driscoll. I'm a Marine Corps wife and mother of 3. My oldest son has autism. The strains on our typical military families are extraordinary. You add on the challenges of autism, access to care issues, and at times having to pay for effective treatments, and these families are pushed to the brink. We've lived in 5 different homes. That means 5 different medical communities, 5 different school districts, and 5 different state-run programs. The biggest challenge I face as a mother is going from bottom of wait list to bottom of wait list, never getting access to the effective services our children require. I feel like I'm constantly fighting for these services. We are working on a bill in Congress called the Caring for Military Kids with Autism Act that works to true up these policy deficits. You ask any service member overseas today, what can we do for you? They will always answer, please take care of my family at home.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest in the studio right now is Angela Persicke. She is a BCBA, which is a board-certified behavior analyst. She also happens to be a BCBA who has extensive experience working with children on the autism spectrum, and I think that that's important to note, especially because the question that has come in has been about, we've been talking about BCBAs and the kinds of things that you would talk about with your BCBA. They want to know what's the best way to find a BCBA. They said, I assume our ABA provider would have one to refer us to, but what other resources are out there to find one? Thanks. There's a lot of questions in there, actually. So let's start with what's the best way to find a BCBA?
Well, if you are not part of, if you're not with an ABA provider right now and you're just on your own maybe you just received the diagnosis and you're not sure what to do with it, if you go to the BACB.com, you will be able to locate any BCBA in the world.
Okay.
So there's a search tool on there where I believe it actually says find a BCBA.
Yeah.
Click on there and every board certified behavior analyst is listed on this website.
Okay, so it's www.bacb.com. And you will see that there are lots of different tabs there because, if you are a BCBA, there's information for you there. But if you're I think if the language is find a provider, maybe even.
Yeah.
And important to note that that is the definitive source to go, because if you are actually a BCBA, you have a license through the organization that has that website.
Well, it's we're certified, so it's we're certified behavior analysts. It's a little different than licensed.
Okay.
But for this purpose, it's not really that important. But it's a board certified behavior analyst, and there are in some states licensed behavior analysts.
Okay.
So it just depends on the state really and what they require. But the BACB website will have all these listed.
Okay. Now, great information to go there, but sometimes we've sent people there and you guys are a little overwhelmed, and we want to make sure that we tell you that not everyone who is a BCBA has experience working with autism. So you might see 50 people on the list that are in your area, and you can put in your zip code, and you can specify if you want people within a 15-mile radius or a 30-mile radius, but maybe you get 50 and you go, wow, look at this wealth of BCBAs. But that doesn't mean that they all have experience with autism.
Correct.
And you want to have somebody who has experience with autism. So at that point, then, do you suggest, what do you suggest? Do you suggest you start contacting them individually, or?
Yes, if, like I said, if you're without a provider, without an ABA provider, and you are just looking for a behavior analyst nearby, you could contact them, and they have emails on the site as well, contact information. And so email them. But the first question you should ask is, what is their experience with autism?
Right.
And you can say that you found them on the website, and that's how you were able to get in contact with them.
Right.
But it's very important to ask about their experience with working with individuals with autism.
Now, I always add to that because I look at that list and I'm overwhelmed, right? I've looked at the list though, and I know how many BCBAs are in my area. But then I would suggest going to whatever local support group of parents that's there, whether it's TACA or a FEET or a Yahoo group or whatever, and saying, who do you recommend? But I think that both are important because I don't remember which state it was back east that there was somebody who was telling a bunch of parents that she was a BCBA and was charging them a whole lot of money to do therapy. And then, of course, they found out that she was just somebody who walked in off the street and hung a shingle and was not on that website at all. So you do want to check and be on the safe side for yourself, and the place to go is that BACB.com. But I would also suggest checking with parents and saying, who do you recommend from this list? It'll narrow that list. Then you still want to talk to them yourself, but narrow it down with parent recommendations. And I always say, get multiple. Don't ask just one parent, right? Because we're all different in the way we see things. And, you might talk to one parent and they'll say, oh, so-and-so is just, I hate them. But on further investigation, what you find is that they hate them because they couldn't make an appointment at Tuesday at 1 o'clock, right? I mean, let's be fair here. And that's not a reason for you not to use that BCBA. And it could be the other way as well. So, make sure these are our kids, and you do need to check who you're working with. Now, the other part of it that they say in this question is I assume that our ABA provider would have one to refer us to. Yes. Let's address that.
Okay. In most states, a board-certified behavior analyst is required to be part of an ABA agency, an ABA provider. Will have BCBAs on staff. In the state of California, it's the law.
Right.
In other states as well, some are a little different though. So talk to your ABA provider and ask them who on the staff are behavior analyst.
Right.
A lot of times, as we were saying earlier during the break, we don't necessarily mention right from the first interaction with the parent, hi, I'm a board-certified behavior analyst.
Right.
We just come in and say, hi, I'm the supervisor, clinical supervisor. I will be handling your case from now on.
Right.
So it's possible that the clinical supervisor who manages your child's case is, in fact, a board-certified behavior analyst.
Right.
But it's possible that they aren't as well. But ask the team, ask the provider who in the company is a behavior analyst, or if the team is actually consulting with a behavior analyst, which is very important.
It is important, and I think what you're going to find is that you are working with a BCBA. You just don't and it probably is the person who's making the biggest decisions on your team, and then you'll just know. I will be very honest that when we started out, I didn't know what a BCBA was. I didn't ask, and then eventually, when I would heard the term, I said, "Okay, so who on our team are the BCBAs?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And it was already happening. I just didn't have the information to link the two things together. So that probably is the case for you, especially now with insurance.
Yes.
Because with insurance, your insurance, I think it's across the board. All insurance companies are requiring that a board-certified behavior analyst be making the decisions in the case. So if you've got any kind of insurance funding, I could just about guarantee that there's a BCBA working on your individual case at some place. So, but again, unless you ask, it isn't something that they're necessarily going to be talking about with you and saying, by the way, this is the BCBA on your case. But do ask for. I think a lot of times when we talk about working with a BCBA, it's for people who haven't yet started ABA. And also important to note that you can work with a BCBA for one thing, or you can be working with a BCBA for a 40-hour-a-week program.
Yes.
I think a lot of times people misunderstand and think, well, getting a BCBA means that I have to do that 40-hour-a-week treadmill thing, and my child's 16 years old, and I don't have the time, I don't have the funding for it, and you don't have to do that.
No.
So if, for instance, your 16-year-old child were engaging in self-injurious behavior and you were concerned, or your child were depressed, or having a skill deficit in a very specific area that you wanted to address and you weren't concerned about the rest of it, you could have a BCBA come in and work with your child on that one targeted thing, have a big improvement, and only do that.
Yes.
There's no law against that. In fact, people do that all the time.
Behavior analysts do that all the time, and you know, there are short-term contracts. I know that a lot of school districts will often have BCBAs on staff as well, so you may want to talk to your school too to see if they have a behavior analyst for the school district. That
they should.
The services should in that case be covered by the school district, and a lot of times they will have short-term contracts, so 3 months or even 6 months or shorter than that, and the behavior analyst will come in and work on specific skills.
Yeah. And if your child is engaging in any challenging behavior in the classroom, we get a lot of parents who write in and say, well, my child's getting kicked out of the classroom for doing X, Y, or Z, right? And the parent is upset about it, and it gets to the point where they want to move the child to a different classroom, put them in a special day classroom, not have them in inclusion because they're engaged in that behavior. And I'm always saying to parents, don't let it get to that point. Before it gets to that point, ask for the BCBA to do an FBA.
Yep.
And I want to remind parents, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have a BCBA come in, you really have to have a BCBA to come in and find the function of the behavior, which is that FBA that I just mentioned. But once you have the BCBA, it's possible that everybody else could, with the right tools, write the intervention plan and implement. Better to have the BCBA on board for all that.
It's better to consult with the BCBA the whole time during, you know, even writing the intervention plan. It's very important because if the intervention does not actually address the function of the behavior, it will not work. So it's important to at least consult with a BCBA throughout this process. A lot of times a BCBA will conduct the FBA, the functional behavior assessment, and write the intervention and train all people involved to implement the behavior.
That's the
intervention
ideal
plan.
world. That's the ideal world. But I want to remind everybody that at least ask the school, if your child has been getting kicked out of school even once, and they're saying, well, it's because, usually they'll say, well, they got kicked out because they did the behavior before and now they're getting, so that's a pattern. Ask for the FBA.
And part of your child's IEP will include the FBA process. So that is a requirement for IEPs to include the functional behavior assessment process. A lot.
And sometimes, yes. And we kind of got off topic because we were talking about siblings. But you know, I got very impassioned about make sure that you talk to your BCBAs and that you're including your siblings and that you're taking them. The expression that was said to me that I always use is, this program that you're doing with your child has to grow legs. It has to go into the community. Let's talk briefly, before I have to let you go, about generalizing skills and why siblings can be so important. So remind us what generalizing skills is.
Okay, generalization refers to seeing the skill in a different environment with different people, with different stimuli. So not just learning in one little environment with one person, but seeing the skill used in other settings with other people. So if you have, you know, another child in the home, a sibling, you can use you can take a lot of the skills the child is learning right now and test for generalization. So if we're working on shapes right now and your child is identifying different shapes with you, or with the therapist, but then your sibling has, you know, a ball and the child isn't able to say that that's a circle, you know, then it's important to actually promote generalization by programming for it. So you need to have the child practice the skills with other people, and having siblings right there in the home, there's another child, another person to be able to practice the skills with. So it's likely if you're testing for generalization with another sibling or another person that the child might actually demonstrate that skill outside of the house.
Right.
So
giving another opportunity.
Exactly. Another learning opportunity, and it's not just sitting there and wondering, oh, will my child do this outside of therapy sessions?
Right.
You can actually test for that by trying it out with your different siblings and in different environments when you're not, if there's not a session and you're taking your children to the store or to the park or something, you can see if the skills generalize to those settings as well.
Yeah, and this is one of those cases where jargon comes into play, because it took me forever to understand the concept of generalization and understand the word with it. Because I think anytime it's a word that we use in other ways, it makes it that much harder to get into your head how you use the jargon. But I know I was always excited. I would see generalization. I knew what the concept of it was. It wasn't matching it with the word. But I hope you guys get this, and tell me if I get this wrong. But imagine that you sat there and you wanted to teach your child salutations, greetings and salutations, and so you say hello to the child, and the child says hello back, and you're like, great, and you practice it in different ways with yourself and your husband, that you're wanting to do that so that the child says hello back to you, and they say hello back to the husband, and they say hello when you come into the room, and they say hello when you come into the bathroom, they say hello when you go outside. That's great. But you need for the child in real life, when somebody says hello, to say hello. You're hoping to get to that.
Exactly.
And every opportunity that you have for somebody else to ask it in a different way, in a different circumstance, you're getting closer to the point where someone your child has never met before, in a store that they've never been in before, says, well, hello, and your child says hi. And you go, there it is. They have it.
Yep.
My child is going to say hello to people now in all circumstances. That's the moment.
And also, siblings can be used as models too. Because if we go and we run into someone and we're like, say hello every time we have to, but the sibling automatically says hi.
Right.
You know, that's a model, a direct model for the other child to maybe say hello to.
Yes.
So that would be a great way to use siblings too, as models of appropriate behavior in different contexts.
Yes. But I love what you said earlier about making sure that you reinforce the sibling as well. I know it's hard. All these things to consider. I can't imagine. I hope we get to, we've been talking about adopting. I hope my son is counting on a sibling. But then I'm going to be with all of you going, they fight all the time. Now it just looks like happy, happy joy to me, like puppies, the way they scramble. I'm sure that I'll be pulling my hair out. It's all good. I'm shaving my head anyway. It doesn't matter. In any case, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to see about, I know we're not going to have you in the studio next Thursday, but we're going to see if we can have you earlier in the week if that works out. We should mention why we're not going to have you next week. Where are you going? Because we think we're going to go just for one day.
Yes, I will be at the California Association for Behavior Analysis annual conference in Garden Grove, the 21st through the 23rd.
Very good. And that, I imagine there'll just be lots of BCBAs there. So we're trying to make arrangements to be there just for the Friday to catch some interviews with some people to bring back to you guys.
And parents can attend this conference as well.
That's good to know, and I did not know that. And I have been saying ever since we went to ABI International that parents should go to these things. It's really quite amazing what you guys present on. And are you going just to view, or are you presenting?
No, I will be presenting.
What are you presenting?
We are presenting in a symposium some new research we just recently finished on teaching children to detect and respond to deceptive statements, specifically by peers. So statements to exclude the child from activities or to take their things. So when other children lie to them and say, you can't play because you have brown hair.
Right, so, we know that happens.
And we successfully successfully taught this to 3 children, taught them to identify when others are lying to them and to say, no, you're lying, that's not true, or go tell a teacher or a parent.
Wow. All right, we have to talk more about this when you come back in 2 weeks. Okay, fascinating. Which day is that?
That is Thursday at 1:30.
All right, well, we wish you lots of luck, and we're grateful for the parents that are going to be there to hear about that, and we'll talk more about that in 2 weeks.
Great.
Thanks for being with us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to finish out the show with a school tip, oddly enough. Stick with us. What do you think about the prevalence of autism, the rising number of prevalence, and what are your thoughts on what this world is going to be like with so many individuals on the autism spectrum?
I think a lot of the increase is just increased detection on the milder spectrum, but I think there is some severe autism that's increased. Older parents having children would be one factor. You know, lack of vitamins, like the B vitamins prior to pregnancy, chemical insults, taking prescription drugs in the first trimester. There's a whole lot of little insults like this that can interact with susceptible genetics. I work in a technical field, and there's mild autism and Asperger's and dyslexics all over it. One of the best millwrights in the feedlot industry is severe dyslexic. He's one of the best millwrights that there is, and that builds complicated feed mills. And the thing that worries me is they've taken so many of the hands-on classes out of the school: cooking, sewing, woodworking, metalworking, auto shop. There's a lot of kids that are kind of different. They make great mechanics, and we have a shortage of mechanics right now. We have a shortage of engineers. I'm getting concerned that there's some smart kids that are kind of different, kind of getting a handicap label. Now, where the diagnosis really makes a difference is later on in life with their relationships. And the wife is wondering why the husband is not very demonstrative and, you know, not very lovey-dovey and emotional. And this is where getting a diagnosis can really help their marriage, because then the wife understands. See, that's where that kind of, when it comes to relationships, that's where the diagnosis can really, really make a difference. I think one of the problems today is sort of a more social society today. You know, the kid that was a little bit not too social before, he'd be out there in the auto mechanic shop getting along great with the shop teacher, and they gotten rid of that kind of stuff. You see, I'm in a weird situation where I walk back and forth between the autism world and the sort of metalworking and cattle working kind of world. And there's farmers that I know that are on the spectrum, and they're doing great in farming.
So maybe it's not that they're not these kids actually do have a diagnosis then, but maybe the prevalence was there before?
Well, I think on the mild end, I think the prevalence is probably there. But I think there's severe autism that has increased. There's way too much sugar in the diet. We also have an omega-3 deficient diet in this country. We're not getting enough omega-3s. I think let's go back to the alternative things: fish oil supplements, some of the B vitamins, and lots of exercise. Kids are eating way too much sugar, and kids are not just getting enough activity. You know, mother used to say to me, go outside and run the energy out of you. Well, the kids aren't doing that today, so that makes the ADHD worse.
That is our newest installment of Temple Grandin. We interviewed her a couple of weeks ago, and we've been getting them out to you from time to time as we edit them. Really remarkable. It still makes my face grin having an opportunity to have talked to her and the amazing things that she said. So really, really spectacular. Also, I promised that we were going to come back and talk about a school tip. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, because so many of the things that we've been hearing this week, I mentioned the mom that we talked about yesterday who wrote into us and said how frustrating it was when she went to the school after feeling like things weren't going well. And the teacher finally, in frustration, said, you know, you should think about getting her diagnosed. And the mom, in horror, said, no, she has a diagnosis. You knew that. That was part of the IEP. And we've talked before, and of course, I don't remember whether it was Lisa Ackerman or Holly Riley. It was one of our TACA moms who said one of the best things that they do every year, like their top tip, is to take their IEP and to put it into a sheet protector, make copies of it, and really consolidate it down. Like, what are the goals if there's a behavior intervention plan to really consolidate it down and put it in bullet points so that it's super duper easy to see, and to put them in sheet protectors and give a copy of it to every single person at the school at the beginning of the school year, maybe even the day before school starts, every person who interacts with your child. Because there's a lengthy IEP meeting, everybody sits there and discusses it, and there is this great hope that everybody retains the information and that they know what they're doing and that they're going to be accountable for it. I am a former school teacher, and I know that even among the most diligent of teachers, there's so much that they're overwhelmed with that you run the possibility for someone to forget, not have it present uppermost in their minds. Why not make it easier for them? As I think it was Holly Riley who pointed this out, that a lot of times that IEP is locked up in a filing cabinet someplace and everybody doesn't have free access to it. So why not put it in the sheet protector and make it super duper, language that almost anybody could follow. If your behavior intervention plan identifies a problem behavior that your child does because they escape, that they will run away from tasks that involve, fill in the blank, and that the intervention for that is to not allow them to escape, and before you put this certain kind of demand, whatever it is, on them, that you have in place certain things, then you would make sure that you language that in bullet points so that when you're giving it to the lunch lady, that she knows what it is she's supposed to say before this happens. If it goes wrong, what it is she's supposed to do. We could potentially have a lot of the things that we hear about not happen if we are proactive and make sure that, even though obviously you don't have time to train these people, but if it says on the sheet, by the way, this is a great thing for a babysitter too, if our child spits, here's what we do. Here's what you say, here's what you don't do, make it easy, and then give that to everybody on the team so that they can't say they didn't know. And hopefully it's an opportunity for them to ask more questions. Now, Emily is scrolling through some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us, because the show is about to end, but the conversation goes on. And we love it when you guys interact with us. It really is one of the true joys of being able to be here for all of us. So please take the opportunity and let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what's happening, what your issues are, what you'd like to see more on the show. We're going to be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our special guest tomorrow, we have, three actual guests. We're going to have Dr. Adele Nadowski with us tomorrow morning, and very excited about what she's going to be talking about with problem solving with us. And then, of course, on Fridays, we always have, when we can, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we're going to be talking with him about some problem solving skills too. But we're also, while he's here, going to be joined from a member of Lineagen, and we're going to talk about what this genetic testing has, what the benefits are for those of us who are parents. That's all tomorrow, and we will encourage your interaction then. And in the meantime, check out the kinds of things that we have going on Facebook. We always appreciate your Facebook likes. I want to also programming note that we will not be having a live show on Monday because it's President's Day that we'll be celebrating, and we won't have a live show on Friday because we're hoping to be at that Cal ABRA conference. So just Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week live. But until tomorrow, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.